Woerner's daughter. Am I correct?
Lord, Eddie boy. Okay, first off, you know who it is if they say Uncle Eddie boy, because everyone, believe it or not, everyone calls him Uncle Eddie boy, but he actually is my uncle. Like he
Oh, he's the uncle, not the father. Okay.
has the honor of actually having the biological connection as Uncle Eddie boy. Oh my gosh. By the way, I am his favorite niece. He has like a million of them, but I am his. I can text him right now and he will say you're my favorite.
Okay, Chris speaks here today with Brandon Mosley and Christina Woerner McInnis. She is running for the Agriculture Commission seat that's being vacated by Commissioner Rick Pate or term limited. Listened to her a few weeks ago in Blount County, and she has a pretty good speech. And I thought that the best thing to do is why don't you tell us, just introduce yourself. And I heard you talking about how people were using food stamps to buy Monster Energy drinks, and I was like, what? And you was talking about the land that's being sold here. So why don't you just tell us about yourself and introduce you?
Sure. Christina Woerner McInnis. I'm running for Commission of Ag and Industries. You're right. Rick is terming out. And I have to start off by saying that because I spent one meeting and like 20 minutes into it, I had someone give me a little snub with the shoulder and said, Rick is my friend and I'm voting for him. And so then I had to feel like I voted for again. So, yes, I'm running for Commission of Ag and Industries. Super excited. My family has been farming in Alabama since 1906. So my family has been farming here in Alabama for over 100 years. Very proud of that. And so I'm the fifth generation here in Alabama. My four kids are the sixth generation. And I have married Tim McInnis, who's McInnis Construction. Chris and I were just speaking about if you're traveling up 65, 85, if you're in Huntsville, if you are in rural Alabama, those roads and bridges, if you see a crane, if you see a bridge under construction, most likely it is my husband. So he's one of the few bridge builders in Alabama. We come home at night, we both have a set of boots on, and his is on the roads and infrastructure, bridges of Alabama. Mine has been out in the fields for Alabama growing food and farming. So we're very proud of who we are and what we do for Alabama, literally from the ground up. We have four kids. I have been married to Timothy for 22 years. I have two kids at Auburn, one in civil engineering. I'll let you guess who she's taking after. And then I have one in accounting with an ag econ minor. I'll let you guess who she's taking after. And then I have two younger ones still at the house. And I was just speaking with Chris. They're doing this journey with us on politics, and they're learning a whole new side of the world. But I love public service. I love the opportunities to take my skill sets, my talents, what I'm good at, and now giving it back to Alabama to leave it to the next generation. As I'm looking at my four kids and I'm looking at Alabama, I want to make sure that I leave a legacy here that makes us prepared for the next generation. Chris is speaking on what my topics are. So, four of my main topics that I like to talk about. I can talk about a lot of different things because, as you know, the Alabama Department of Ag and Industries is a huge responsibility that is totally taken for granted by the average voter. They do not realize that it touches almost every Alabamian every day. If you're at the gas stations, if you're in a public school cafeteria, if you're in a grocery store, the Alabama Department of Ag has an arm in that. But the four things I want to work on outside of that regulatory role is I really want to emphasize Farm Bill. I want to make sure that we keep foreign interest in China out of our land and our companies. I want to work on the largest national security threat to our nation in our Alabama, which I'll go ahead and give you that release is young farmers. And then fourth, I'd like to use my skill set of what I have done with my large companies that I work with. I do agri-technology and I do a lot, and I can talk about my soil testing, soil health platform, which is software development. So born and raised farmer, but got into software development. So I'd like to see Sweet Grown Alabama turn from a brand and certification into an experience. And I'll talk about that. So let's go into Farm Bill. Number one, Farm Bill, I know I'm emotionally tied to this because I am a farmer. I consider it one of the largest backbone policies of our nation. Our nation was built off agriculture, land grant universities were set up off of agriculture. And I think much of the generation today has completely distanced themselves from farms, farmers, where eggs come from, how potatoes are grown, and their food source just comes from a fast food joint or a grocery store. But farming operates, we have a farm bill, and 2/3 of it, this is one thing Brooke Rollins, who our newest Secretary of Agriculture is for our nation, in her first 100 days has really gone into the SNAP program, which is Supplemental Nutrition Program. And 3/4 of the Farm Bill, $123 billion is spent on SNAP. So imagine having a farm bill, and by nature, you think that's made for farmers, and you would think that SNAP would be using our money in a farm bill to give back to farmers and providing for our nation and growing things. But in fact, SNAP, what we're finding out through this audit and having Brooks' leadership and so forth, that 15 billion of it is being spent on soda. $15 billion is being spent on soda. And when you take the money and you begin to funnel it down and take it all the way down, that leads to 3 out of 4 of those children are clinically obese. Okay. So we are paying to make our nation and our next generation unhealthy. And then you have, as a national average, 13% of the nation are on SNAP. In Alabama, we're slightly larger, we're at 15%. So 1 out of 7 Alabamians are on SNAP. And I can personally attest to the fact that I stood behind somebody at a gas station who used their SNAP for energy drinks. So we are, as a country, misaligned with our spending. And I think we're all beginning to realize that, because we had to question what a female and a male was just a couple months ago. The same for farmers, though. And when you have misaligned your funding in that way, that you're funding soda at 15 billion a year, but yet, and we'll touch on the third point, we can't figure out how to make farming profitable, successful, and getting the next generation into the field. We have a problem. So let me touch on one thing before we get there, which is my largest national security issue. China has purchased 200,000 acres of US soil, 200,000 acres here in the United States, China. And then on top of it, they're buying our meat processing facilities, and they're moving in. And I can tell you, when you're looking at, the FBI publishes the various different documents about this. I'm happy to share this with you after the interview. China openly tells you what they're doing to become a global leader. And part of it is to send their academia to our land-grant universities at the top research facilities to get the intellectual property. They're here to get our agriculture equipment technology, and they go out to the fields and steal seeds that we have spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting it to the point that we can get it into production, and they just walk out into the field, take it, and they bypass decades of research and hundreds of millions of dollars, and they pick right up what we have built. So you have this mounting of what we've taken for granted. There hasn't been a large alarm set off. And I think people are beginning to wake up nationwide saying, look, it's happening right under our nose. You know, I think COVID kind of did that. And how that experience of COVID, we woke up one day and we freaked out over toilet paper. That is what you should be doing right now. Freaked out over the fact that we're selling our land to foreign companies. We're selling our companies to foreign companies. And we are stressing our farmers to the point that we can't even put the young farmers in. The land costs are going up. The inputs have tripled. Equipment is through the roof. And so, you know, those real priorities where your focus should be is sitting over here, and we're spending, I think by state, by Alabama, I think we spent over $500 million on illegal immigrants last year. And then we're spending 15 billion on soft drinks. And then you're standing behind people buying energy drinks, all on taxpayer dollars. So I applaud our leadership. I love what Brooke is doing. And she's saying, hey, look, let's realign our country back to where we built it and what this was all intended to do. And let's position people that farming is front and center on everyone's attention and make everyone realize this is a national security issue because we've got to get the next generation feeding Alabama, feeding the nation. And then, I mean, I apologize, I'm a farmer, so I can go on and on and on about that. But when you're affecting every household in Alabama of how we feed families, you can take over a country pretty quick by cutting off a food supply and controlling their land. So that's kind of my stark of, hey, look, get your focus where it needs to be and get us back realigned as a state. But then one thing that's really great, Rick has built Sweet Grown Alabama. I love it. It's a brand certification, and I'm very familiar with that because I work in the private world, and I have a WEBEC certification. I'm a woman-owned business. I'm very familiar with it, but we have to transform that brand of Sweet Grown into an experience. We have millions, and I can get you the number. Somebody told me that we have millions of tourists that come in on our arteries every day. So as these tourists are pouring through 65, 85 and coming in east, west, and north, they're all pretty much coming in to go to the beach. But what they don't realize is they're passing our number one industry on the way to the beach. Alabama's number one industry is farming. And as they are going through Huntsville, you've got, various farms, and then you come into Clanton and you've got the peach farms, and then you come into different pockets, and then you come down to Baldwin County, and like right now, Hope Casabom's got corn, and it is amazing in season. You have to be able to have that experience along the way, and then you land at the beach. But it drives revenue and creates, it makes Alabama, this is who we are. Let's take who we are and be great in it. I mean, why not showcase it to the nation? So those are kind of my platforms, the things that I really want to work on and change. And I'm excited about this. This is going to be 8 years. So I'm about to celebrate my 45th birthday next week. So as I'm looking at this is something on the other side of this office. I'm going to be in my mid 50s, and I'm going to give my best years to this office and to Alabama. And I am excited. I'm honored that I have people supporting me. I had a great fundraising month. I have got to get back on the phone and start fundraising again. But it's been really special to kind of go throughout the state. Like I said, I took my son last night with me to Choctaw County. We were at the Farmers Federation meeting, and just great people all over our state doing wonderful things. And they need leadership and support that can sit at the federal level, state level, county, and city level, all the way. Katie Britt said it the other day when I was with her, actually last week in Pinson. She's like, look, we got to have one voice in this. We all have to be speaking. This is important to Alabama. This is important to our farmers. And this is important of how we continue our state into the next generation. So I'm super excited about this. And thank you for taking the interview. Chris, I hope I gave you what you were kind of asking me for. I feel like I kind of sucked the oxygen out of the meeting. So do y'all have any questions for me?
Yeah. So what would you do to stop this Chinese takeover from the ag position?
So here's a couple things on it. Number one, because Alabama saw this, I believe it was last year, they stopped the ownership. Okay, so the back door was open. Things have come in, they stopped it. Then they realized China was renting. Okay, so now we have China renting. Okay, so now it's been stopped to sensitive areas. So I think we really employed the people who are in these positions to, number one, keep a close eye on it. And number two, I'm watching other states begin to claw back. So they're beginning to take back what the back door let in. So I think we should take a close look at that and see, are those states doing it successfully? Is this the right thing to do? But number one, we're stopping it. Number two, we're stopping the loopholes, keeping an eye on the other loopholes that they're going to try to get creative with. Because I'll show you the plan. They say that they're sending their academia into our intellectual property research and development labs. That is currently ongoing. And I think Trump just released 3 days ago that he's going to monitor the visas and how they're coming into our colleges. Because here you go and build this program, get to the very final end, and you're like, and I can say this because our family is currently in a research program with a land grant university. And it's not our state's university, it's another state. And we have hundreds of plots. It's covered by a camera, it's covered by gates, it's a biosecurity issue. I mean, I know how much time and investment, it's almost a whole decade for us on this one project. And so by the time you get to the very end, somebody has all the answers and they can just take it and go with them. I mean, you're going to have to realize the value and maintain your possessions that you have, that you've worked for. This is your tax dollars. This is your blood, sweat, and tears. This should be used to stay here and put America first.
You talked about a little bit about too much of the agriculture going into foreign hands, or a little bit of personal history. Out of college, I worked for Carol's Foods, which at the time was the #2 pork and turkey producer in the country. Um, they had an issue while I was there of handing it off to the next generation. Basically, the family owner, her
Secession.
children did not want to do this. So they sold to Smithfield, which was our packer. And Smithfield bought us and Murphy Brothers. Of course, and they already owned Browns of Carolina. And then Smithfield sold the whole corporation to China, actually for more than it was worth, to a Chinese company. Where they get their money is a little bit dubious, but some Chinese company. And so probably, I don't know, maybe as many as a fifth of the hogs in this country are born, with Chinese ownership. And certainly Smithfield, as its packer element, it's one of the 4 largest packers. I experienced some of this myself in my early part of my career before I was a reporter. And then Swift is another one of our major packers. And they were brought out by, they ran into trouble with too many illegal aliens and they got raided. And then they had a shutdown. And then the biggest packer in Brazil, which is, I think, owned by 4 brothers, JBS just stepped in and they just bought Swift, in a bargain basement sale. So I don't think most Americans are aware of this. Of the 4 big packers, one is Brazilian based, one is Chinese based, and then we have the Tyson family, and then the Cargill, Cargill owns XL. So, a family up in Minnesota owns, between the 4 of them, that's probably about 85 or 90% of our meat packing deal. Have we got into a point where maybe the federal government, the Department of Justice, needs to dust off the Sherman Antitrust Act and start breaking some of these big, super consolidated companies up to a point?
I think this is for me in this discussion. I mean, of course, we look at anything, and as a business person, you look at anything because times change. But for me, it's more about foreign ownership than the size of it. And I just have a problem with the fact that if you go to war, I mean, look at what happened with Ukraine and Russia. Even if it's not you going to war, it's somebody else going to war. What is the material over there? I think the nutrient is potash over there. And then it tripled immediately when they went to war. We're affected by people's relationships globally. So the most you can be self-sustained in your country and prepared, we have to begin to look not at always keep an eye on how things came about. Never forget where you've come from, but what can happen in the future. You know, going into it, I think foreign ownership is a huge problem. And then you look at how foreign countries can contaminate you with the biosecurity issue too. I think we're going to have to be really smart about how we navigate foreign ownership in our country, and then what land they're doing, what industries they're doing. I've been told they're buying railroads. I mean, what you're being told on the road as you're visiting various people. Unfortunately, a lot of Alabamians and Americans, we just kind of live in a survival mode where we are not aware of these details. But when you really look at the checkmate, as you're putting the chess pieces out there, when you are trying to be a global leader and you know a weakness, it's in agriculture. It is in agriculture. So come in by the land, come in by the companies, and oh, guess what? You know, cattle's doing really well. And then all of a sudden, the New World screwworm is trying to come through the Mexican border right now. And so here we've got that's a huge issue that my dad was telling me about. My generation we've never woke up concerned about the screwworm, you know? Well, now we've got screwworm coming around. You got Brooke trying to deal with the avian flu. She's putting $1 billion in dealing with the avian flu and $1 billion on how to rectify it. And so most people, I appreciate that you're able to see this because you've had a personal experience. So many people have not had a personal experience with understanding how when a foreign company owns your land and companies, just how much control they can have over you when they're that powerful. And they're powerful and they want to get more powerful.
I sent a Facebook post the other day, and it may have been from you, but it showed in green the thousands, hundreds, whatever acres the Chinese government has bought in Alabama. Are those farm acres that they've bought? Are they controlling that much farm in Alabama now?
So in Alabama, so I don't have an actual figure on Alabama, which I'm working on. 200,000 is the national right now. Here's the problem. Every county I go to, I have someone come up to me at the very end and say, my neighbors, they're Chinese and they're renting. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay. So again, it goes back to, and I use this analogy. I'm from Alberta, okay? Grew up on a farm. When Walmart opened in Foley, probably in the 80s, early 80s, I can remember like that was a huge deal. We didn't have anything like that, okay? We walked in, it was made in the USA, American flags were everywhere. It was a staple mark of true America. That is the Walmart I saw open when I was a kid. Today, I go in Walmart and 90% is Chinese made. Foreign companies and product quality, other different things. We have shifted, right? We branded it in a way that we felt good about it. But what we didn't realize is the shift was happening to, put money in the pocketbooks of the owners, I'm sure, and the shareholders. But at the same time, we became completely dependent upon another country to literally feed us. And a lot of farmers are having issues with how we're shipping meat overseas and then coming back with it. You know, we have a lot of issues we have to make front and center. And I love agriculture and it's amazing. I'm very passionate about it. But I think you kind of have to bring these threats and concerns really kind of in the face to say, this isn't something you play around with here. Like this could mean total control, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, my kids today, in this generation that I'm looking at next, again, I started off with it. They don't even know, well, my kids know, but a lot of them don't know that potatoes are grown in the ground. They don't know where the eggs come from. They don't know how milk is made. I mean, it's concerning how we've kind of turned our eye and gotten a little couple steps off of our priorities.
Hitting back on the foreign ownership, I think I talked with Tommy Tuberville yesterday, and I think the number he threw out was there's 2 million acres of Alabama that is foreign owned. But most of it's not China. I think
Well,
Canada,
Canada, you're right, timber in Canada.
Canada and Germany are like some of the bigger, players. But most about, those of us that aren't like really senior citizens don't remember an Alabama that was mostly in farmland. Everybody had 40 acres and a mule or a couple hundred acres and a mule or they grow watermelons on 10 acres or something. Most of the ground today in Alabama, over 70% of it isn't in farmland, it's in timberland. And that, growing, southern pine, for construction um, as a major issue. If I was super rich, I'd own thousands of acres of Alabama, timberland too. Um, we're talking about getting young people into farming and all that. The trend over the last 50 years has been taking farms and putting them into trees.
Mhm.
And, as you've seen in Baldwin County and, people are experiencing up in Madison and Limestone, bunch of it's going into urban sprawl as those population centers grow. Given, the difficulty in finding open ground now on the market, that's not near a major population center, that's going to be, garden homes in, 10 years. Um, how are young people getting into farming? I mean,
So
if they had the interest in the training,
let's even,
that's not a cheap proposition right now.
no, it's not, and it's not easy. So let's back up even further than that. So even as a farmer, you got to remember, so as you're looking at land, even if somebody says, oh, I have XYZ acres here, well, the soil quality could be totally
Yeah.
non-nutritious for growth too. So, I mean, that's my dad's bone. He said, put the solar panel farms on soil that can't be cultivated, like, so what's happening is even then, a lot of our developments and so forth are taking the best farming soil.
Yeah.
So just put that in perspective. But going back to the industry that you spoke on, so when you're looking at Alabama ADAI cash receipts, um, so I think we have like 8.8 billion a year. 6.6 of that is poultry. So that shows you, let's just call that, I mean, I would say that's, a very golden place in our cash receipts to be. That is something front and center you look at. Second, of course, timber. And I mean, when it comes to timber, it is a lot more, it's just easy. You look at these things that are easy because of our soil systems, our weather patterns, and other things. Poultry and timber are ones that we do very naturally. And how do you get young farmers in? So, and I apologize if I'm using Brooke's words, but she said nobody likes to take a check, you know, but how can we use incentives to get people started? And my dad, I was asking him, I ask people that question because I like to offer a response, but I don't want to be, oh, this was Christina's response. I want it to be a collective of this is what really, really smart people are saying about young farmers. And my dad said, he said, Christina, whatever we do as a nation, you need to make sure that it's a seed that can go and grow and self sustain. You don't want it to be something that you have to feed constantly because farming, if you plant the right seed, is going to flourish. And so, what I want to see done is us taking the farm bill and planting seeds to help young farmers get in there. Special interest rate with finance. That's their number one thing. They'll say, "Oh, I can't get the great financing. I can't do this." Okay, well, we can work with special financing and different things. But most importantly, what I call the farmers out on it, which is why my daughter is getting an accounting with an ag econ background. The part farmers don't like to do is the business backbone of it. They love to get on that tractor. I mean, I've been around farmers. They love to get outside. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to get out there in the ground in the soil. When you bring them into the house and put them in a desk or a chair with any kind of spreadsheets and P&L statements, they'll get really grouchy really fast. And so I want to see more resources. I was provided an opportunity through the Small Business Association. I got a grant and they gave me a kind of micro course in a MBA. I want to see us provide resources because farmers are going to be out in that field. Okay, they're going to be in a tractor. They're not going to be able to sit down till night. I want us to be able to see a platform of industry leaders that help them on the business aspects of how this tax and bonus depreciation, all these different things with specialization on business of impacting farmers. I can't tell you how many farmers I have spoken to, and I get an email from the USDA, and it is, oh, you've got this program, this program, this program, this program. And the farmers who really get it read the emails, they go through it, they're very engaged, and they're able to really participate in these programs. But the newer farmers, the younger farmers, are not aware of a lot of those systems of what we have that can help, especially when there's been an extreme drought, like you saw the drought counties and other things. So I want to make sure a lot of that information is front and center to the young farmers too. So going back to it, in my world, we have a small business development center that offers these resources for free for me when I got started with my software company. So here I am, a farmer, but I needed to do a software platform. And the small business development stepped in to help me with government resources to say, here are some things to help you along the way. Here is a grant for a micro MBA. And it kept getting me stronger along the way. We're not doing that for farmers. We are not doing that for farmers. We are not educating them on how to use USDA programs enough. We're not helping them find special financing enough. We're not really helping them dive into the part that they either are not as strong in or they just simply don't want to do, but it's critical to the business.
So tell me, what do you enjoy most about farming?
Uh, it's, oh, it's very, okay, what I enjoy most, I enjoy the growth side of it. I believe it or not, I've done chickens, cattle, row crops. We've done all of them. My favorite is you reap what you sow. And I love what the land provides you. As for, I'm going to be honest with you, I will give you my number one weakness. When you give me chickens and goats and lambs and cows, they all become my pets. All of a sudden, I look them in the eyes, they become my pets. But I love eating a tomato and I love eating peppers and I love growing beautiful grass. But so my favorite more so is just really seeing what your hands can produce with the land. I'm a soil girl. Those cows, God bless them, they do. They become pets. I'm telling you, they will slip under the
Will that
fence.
become a pet? You're going to kill it though?
Oreo got butchered and put in wax paper in the deep freeze. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it
What
is.
is
And I
it?
got pictures.
You named something you were going to eat?
Yeah, you don't do that, but that is what you ate on a farm. My thing is my cousins, I learned from my cousins, he named them T-bone and filet. I was naming them Oreo and butterscotch. I was on a totally different track as a kid. But it's funny because today all the principles are built off farming. Okay. So you hear the analogy chicken with your head cut off. Well, I have a picture of me and I am in 4-H and I have raised this little egg. We have hatched this chicken. I take care of this chicken. Well, it comes time that I got to cut the head off, defeather it, cook it, and eat it in 4-H. And so I hold the head of the chicken right here and I let the body this way and I take that machete and okay. Well, what do you think the body does? The body comes off the table, the butcher table, comes chasing me, covers me in blood. And that chicken, I promise you, still had eyes, somehow touched that body. It was chasing me in a zigzag pattern. And I mean, so a lot of the things you hear today are very agriculture based, chicken with the head cut off, or, I mean, it's just you go back to the basics. You really do. When things go awry, you go back to the basics. And agriculture is the basics. It's the backbone of our nation and our state. I love it. I love ag. But you now remember, in this office, don't forget the industries. So you got Alabama Department of Ag and Industries. So we should hashtag this, don't forget the I. So as you're looking at, I mean, John Deere is trying to pump in billions of dollars. You've got the port that's getting deepened and widened. This is our number one industry. Our priorities and forefront insight should also be about building the vertical integrations of meat processing facilities, bringing equipment people here. I mean, it should be very much like using that corridor all the way. Say, okay, your peaches, we're doing value added here. How could we export? You're a chicken farmer. I mean, timber is a huge export of the port. I went down and sat with John Driscoll there to get a status update on the port. I mean, huge amount of ag go in and out there. So I will emphasize the fact in this role, let's not forget the I. This is Alabama Department of Ag, and you also need a representation to understand the business industry side of this that surrounds it too.
Uh, During COVID, because you couldn't have people working close to each other and we shut down the plants, the big packers shut down. And then all of a sudden, they weren't slaughtering cattle or hogs or even chickens like they were. And, the farmer who's selling to the the feedlots weren't buying because nobody was buying their fat cattle. And so, I mean, my cattle, calf prices dropped to like $400, for a calf today that would be, that prior to that would have been bringing $900. They're begging somebody to buy it. In that deal, he's like, well, why don't we have packers close by? And it was like a big deal there for a year. It's like, we need our own packers. And I think the Porch Creek Indians cleared a site and began construction on a packer because, I mean, everybody thinks of the Indians for gambling. They own a heck of a lot of cattle out there.
You gotta think about it. And I'm very familiar with Perdita River, the Porch Creek. They're totally focused on diversifying their portfolio.
Yeah.
Many people, you're right, they're totally focused on, oh, it's just casinos, it's just casinos. No, they're in information, they're in cyber. I think they're in aircraft, they're in like space. I mean, they're covering all things, but look what they didn't forget, the basics of, hey, look, if we go to war, something goes awry, we got to be able to go get the meat out of the field, process it, and feed the people. So
Yeah.
even through looking at various diversifications, they made sure not to take their eye off the ball of how do we survive should something occur.
Well, I mean, the Porch Creeks were, that they actually started construction on a packing facility. And I think Rick Pate got some grant money. It's, like $50 million or something from somebody. And he was looking at starting a packing plant somewhere. Of course, now we've gone past COVID. And, because I think people are getting hit harder, in the pocketbook, they're staying home and cooking more of their meals. And when you cook your meals, you kind of want a nicer main course than if you're eating chicken nuggets or tenders out. So, beef prices have gone way up here. I mean, they're getting like $2,000 a calf now.
Mhm.
Where are we? Because we've sort of taken our eye off the ball because we really don't need to have those little local packers in Alabama right now because prices are, places it's never been. Are we still proceeding with building those couple of packing plants here in Alabama that was a big thing 4 years ago?
So on County Road 32 here, I believe, and I should fact check this for you, I believe the estimate was $11 million. And it is called, like Maximum Meat or something, Maximus Meats, but it's right here, like half a mile from my office, a multi-million-dollar meat processing facility here in Summerdale, Alabama. So many people are excited about it, but you've got Perdita River, you got Summerdale, but what about the rest of the state? Are we covering the other rural pockets so that people are able to get that done? And then on top of it, you're looking at like meat, but we are actually a net importer of eggs. And you saw what the avian flu did at our egg prices during Easter. So, you know, how can we balance more? Because we're very focused, although everyone says, oh, but poultry and egg is our #1 industry. Most of it's broiler. So there's a lot of opportunities to kind of build on what we're doing great and kind of like you said, balance that shift so that avian flu happens, COVID happens, screwworm happens to the cattle, and whatever biosecurity issue is next, how does that impact how we handle our commodities in this state? But so
So,
I have one
oh,
opening
sorry,
up.
no, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, sorry.
Okay, so I've got a tough question for you. And this is usually something the Democrats are always crying about when it comes to race and sex and this right here. But are you concerned that people may say, look and say that the agriculture job is a man's job? And how would you overcome people who might have those pre notions?
I asked somebody the other day, I said, what do you consider my #1 obstacle I have to overcome? And they didn't even miss a beat. They said, you're a girl. I was like, okay, all right, you think that's my #1 obstacle in life? I'm a girl. So how do I overcome that? Can't change that. I'm going to remain a girl. Good news is I'm staying female.
Thank you for
Uh,
This
that.
isn't the Biden administration.
we're not going to go radical here. So the good news is I'm just going to have to go with what I was raised. I was raised by Grandma Lily, my Gigi, my third daughter, Charlie Ann's named after her, Joanne, and my first daughter's named after Lily, and then my mama. I mean, look, I saw those ladies go through tons of hardship, and their ingenuity is what saved the farms. My grandma Lily, so she had 6 boys, 2 girls, and the farm saw horrible times, but they were growing great stuff out of the farm. And she said, but you can't connect to the customers. She opened our first ever city garden center, and it's what saved the company. Gigi, Big Papa was out on the farm, did amazing sweet potatoes. She opened a gas station in Alberta and served soft cream and gas and other things to help keep the family afloat. My mom lived in a single wide with my dad. They had my older sister Angela, and Frederick came in and a tornado took them out. And they struggled. The bank city loan them money to rebuild a house, and they were trying to build a family. Someone so graciously stepped up to help our family get financing, but she had to grow a garden in the 5 acres around the house to sell in the front yard to make the mortgage. I think although this will be considered my largest obstacle is the fact I'm a girl, I think it gives me a perspective to look at this with a different set of eyes and address problems in a different way. So rest assured, we've had a lot of time with the man at the wheel. Let's just see what a girl's going to do at the wheel. But the good news is, and I will emphasize this, I don't want to make it about a gender issue. I've got some really great men in my life who are in my ear. My dad and my husband and my father-in-law, I have been blessed to be, they are my #1 cheerleaders. When I turn around, I mean, that's key also. So don't want to harp on that. let me just say this, you're not going to see me play victim on the fact I'm a girl.
Well, what an answer.
Um, our #1, agricultural commodity, of course, is the broilers that we butcher and ship all over the world. But the grain that those chickens are fed, and if we decide to butcher cattle and have cattle plants, we're going to have to feed those cattle. Most of the grain is imported from Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, West Texas, believe it or not, and it comes to Alabama. Is there anything in the works we're probably always, especially if we sell as many chickens as we do, we're probably always going to be a grain deficit state. But is there anything in the works to try to make it less extreme of a deficit? Because it's like 80% or some insane number.
So you're right. So I wish I had all the answers on this interview. This is one where I was actually listening to some really smart people talk about And they said within 48 hours, if you shut the grain off, the country will begin to unfold. You're right. I mean, that's something, but again, it goes back to, I mean, I don't really grow avocados very well in my backyard. You know, I mean, although I love avocado, would love to have avocado trees all over my yard, it would require a greenhouse. So grain is something that grows really well in that pocket of the United States. They do that well. I wish I had an answer for you on how we can secure it, to give us a little bit more rest assurance on how to prop this up should something occur. I know that there are people who are looking at this and talking about this. Unfortunately, I don't have a really good, other than I'm listening to what other people are saying about it and doing about it. But you're right. I mean, 48 hours is all it's going to take.
Um, I think that's all I have for you. You have a great command of the issues, unless Brandon's got some more questions.
Maybe changing the topic ever so slightly. Um, I'm, give old enough. I remember dairy cows. We had dairies like all over the place. I mean, remember as a boy, you could buy milk and ice cream and butter and whatnot from like stores at the local dairy. And, I know people that were in the process. George Barber, his family made, and that we think of them as real estate developers that actually began as a dairy processing company. Um, all our, the milk in the Alabama stores, other than a little tiny portion of it, is imported. Most of it comes from California or Wisconsin. Um, I know Cali had a drought issue a few years ago, and they were looking to save water any way they could. And their dairy industry, which is, like the biggest in the nation, them in Wisconsin, takes a huge amount of water. Has anybody thought about contacting those big dairymen in Cali? And one thing Alabama has is plenty of water. We probably could take 10,000 or 15,000 of those Holsteins and ship them to like the Black Belt and maybe get back into a degree of dairy self-sufficiency, or is that ship already sailed?
So, what's concerning about that is I'm even hearing that Georgia's shutting their dairy down. I think I heard that 2 weeks ago. So not only are we decreasing, but now the neighboring states are decreasing. I do not have, I mean, do I think that's a great idea? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when you're in the Black Belt and that pH is really high, the nutrients are very different, and you're looking at various different crops, commodities, catfish, other different things that can go into different pockets. You want to put, dairy where it's served best, lots of water. You can deal with, litter, I call it litter runoff, manure runoff, and other different things that come with a dairy farm. But you're right. I mean, here in Alberta, I mean, we used to have all that kind of stuff here, and it's just no longer, you can't just go to some local farm and pick this up anymore. I don't have any other, a long-term plan on that. I would like to talk to maybe a little bit more that have a discussion on that. One thing touching on broilers that I would like to see, going back to it, kind of what I've been focused on is what are we doing really great right now in Alabama, and broilers is one of them. And because I have kids, I had my son come home, and sometimes the best people are kind of the ones next to you who haven't been in this choir box as a career politician. And my son came home, and I kind of embarrassed him because I have a magnet on my car, and oh mom, my pictures see you on YouTube, this, that, and the other. He said, "But he told me that you're going to be able to make our school lunches better." And I said, yes, that's part of the job. There's a part of the job where $1, or for every dollar you get 25 cents back. And there's like some, strings attached to it of how much can be spent and this, that, and the other. And to my knowledge, going back to milk, Tennessee did that. I think they put milk in the school cafeterias because it was something they were doing really good. It's something good for calcium in the bones in kids. And they took that dairy and put it easily accessible in the public school systems. And so, what I want to emphasize is let's address what you're concerned about with dairy, but let's also address the fact that 3 out of 4 are clinically obese on SNAP right now. And our job as parents, as a nation, as a state, as farmers, let's take some really good, wholesome protein of chicken and put more of it on the plate in the public school systems. Very similar to what Tennessee did with the milk. So let's kind of get back to those basics. And in doing so, you're going to realize when you're trying to draw attention to chicken and milk back to your children, you suddenly begin to realize we need to bring those industries back into Alabama so it's a direct connect between the farm and to our schools. So I hope I kind of correlated that, but I actually have bad news on dairy just because I heard there's been a big Georgia shutdown and some other process running and things going on there. But I would like to see more emphasis on that and use the public school system, use our kids, use their health, and trying to get them healthier again in the right way and feeding our farmers when we do it, funding our farmers.
Thank you so much for being on. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'm trying to think. My husband tells me all the time I should probably be more relatable, but I think I told you a chicken with the head cut off. I think I kind of told you a farmer.
I think you're very relatable. I mean, I think you had a great command of the issues, and I wish you a lot of luck. I almost called you Susan again 3 or 4 times on this. I don't know why. I was just texting Susan a while ago, and I've got that on my brain so much today.
No, I appreciate the interview. Would love to share it on our social channels. I just want to bring it back front and center that a lot of the state has, because this is our, in some ways, you just assume your food safety is great and everything's good here. We've gotten a little too comfortable with the Department of Ag and Industries. And so I really want to say, hey, it's been great that we're comfortable, but make sure you know the threats and the other things, like you said, the dairy, the cattle, the this or that, that we understand that if we don't watch the chess pieces very closely, this is checkmate in a wrong way.
Yeah, I will get it uploaded to YouTube in a couple hours. I got something I got to do, and then I'll share it to a bunch of Facebook groups, and I'll tag you in it too, and you can share it to your groups as well.
Okay, great. Perfect. Well, I appreciate it,
All
guys.
right, there's that. Thank you very
Thanks.
much for coming on today. Stop recording.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.